Hey everybody, how are you guys doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today is my favorite kind of day because today is Q&A day. Those of you who have been around the channel for a while know that I like to do these a few times per year, where I go online to Twitter or to the YouTube community section and I send out a post saying, hey, give me your questions about gaming stuff, ask me whatever you want. I'm going to select a few, I'm going to answer them on a video and give you a shout out and do all of that fun stuff. And that's what I did, I think, the day before yesterday. I asked you guys for some questions, and I specifically chose 5 questions only because I tend to drone on, and I don't want to make these answers or these videos too much longer than they need to be. But I love doing this. I love interacting with you guys in this way. I always get great responses and great questions, and today is no different. I got a ton of good stuff from you guys, and so not going to waste any more time. We're just going to jump into these. First question from DoomGC at Doom_2332 says, Metroid Prime 4, would you like to have almost all cutscenes from Samus's helmet's perspective like Doom 2016 did, or a more traditional approach like past games? This is a really fun question, and I think it's a neat element about Metroid Prime 4 to consider that, if I'm being honest, I hadn't considered. Despite the fact that I'm always thinking about Metroid Prime 4 and theorizing about different elements of the game, the cutscenes and how we would see Samus interact with the story really hasn't been top of mind for me yet. So I like where you're going here, and I would say, to answer the question, ultimately, I would mostly prefer it to be a little bit more like past games. I like it when we get those few brief cutscene moments in the Prime games where we get to see Samus from outside of her first-person perspective. She's coming across a boss, she's coming across Dark Samus, and we see them show down, and, you know, the camera becomes cinematic for a very brief amount of time. It's not like there's a lot of cinematics to these games. Maybe the first time she comes in contact with Dark Aether, we're seeing Samus from outside of her first-person perspective, and seeing her get attacked by the Ing and lose all of her powers and get sent back to Light Aether, right? Moments like that, to me, are kind of part of what makes Metroid Prime cool. And it's also because, I mean, I'm a Samus fanboy, so I want to see Samus, right? If you think about it, remaining in Samus's visor in the first-person view through both all of the gameplay and all of the cutscenes means we never would actually see Samus herself. And that doesn't have to be bad. I think that they would do it well if they went that route, but I want to see Samus, right? You just want to see her being awesome. That's what makes it a lot of fun to be Samus and to play a Metroid Prime game. So at the end of the day, you know, I get so excited thinking about how the new technology and a new version of Metroid Prime is going to look, and how much more badass and how much more cinematic they could make Samus feel in Metroid Prime 4 because of the era that we're in now, compared to 2007 when Metroid Prime 3 came out. You guys have to remember how long ago that was. It's just too exciting to think about seeing her be badass in a cinematic way in a cutscene. Now, what I will say, you make a comparison to Doom 2016, and look, I love Doom 2016. I think it was better than Doom Eternal, and I like that game too. So I loved what they did with Doom, and I like the idea of kind of a visceral first-person view of Samus, you know, in her helmet, doing some kind of fighting for occasional cinematic moments. I think that there could be a cool way for them to do that occasionally. But if I was to choose as a Metroid and a Samus fan, the #1 way I would want the cutscenes to play out would be traditional, where we're just seeing her outside of the first-person perspective, just kicking ass and being awesome. Next question comes from Selkadoom at Selkadoom14. Sealkadoom, maybe, if I'm saying that correctly. Says, would you want the Zelda franchise to split into 2? One that's more free, like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and one that's more traditional, 2D or 3D with dungeons and linear structure with key items to go to the next one? Or would you rather Zelda continue in its current path after Tears of the Kingdom? So this is another pretty fun question and an interesting way to analyze what's happening with Zelda. It's a great time to do it because Tears of the Kingdom is only like 2 weeks away right now, which is freaking mind-blowing. It's so exciting. You know, I think what I would prefer, this might be controversial. In fact, there's probably no way to answer this question without being controversial. I just feel like everyone would have very specific opinions on this. For me, I don't necessarily want Zelda to split in two the way you say. I am somebody who does miss the more traditional Zelda format. I love the older games just like I love Breath of the Wild, and I know I'm going to love Tears of the Kingdom even more. But yes, I like dungeons. I like having a companion. I like having big open spaces and like fun quests and secrets to find, but still having an overall kind of linear path through a Zelda game. I think of games like Wind Waker and Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, you know, some of my favorite games. And I even love the classic games, of course. I'm an old man. I grew up on Zelda, The Adventures of Link, and A Link to the Past. Like, so all of those 2D and 3D, more traditional structured Zelda games are fantastic. And I love Breath of the Wild. It's one of the best games I've ever played. It was a great change to the franchise. But yes, I still long for the days of the more classic Zelda formula. Tears of the Kingdom, I think, is going to operate as the perfect and just incredible sequel, direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, and continue on the ideas that that game introduced and just make it bigger and grander and better. And so that's great. After Tears of the Kingdom, I mean, I guess you could split in two in the sense that, you know, Nintendo has been playing with spin-offs and other Zelda games for a while anyway. You know, they've been releasing traditional games like, you know, you get your Skyward Sword, you get your Breath of the Wild, you get your Twilight Princess, but then they've also been releasing like games like Triforce Heroes, they've made games like Phantom Hourglass, they've made games like the Link's Awakening remake, for example, and Hyrule Warriors is another spin-off series. You know, they can kind of do both if they want to keep staggering main Zeldas and weird spin-off ideas. But as far as like the main line, which is what I think you're asking, I don't know if you can split them into two. I think you're always going to have the main Zelda games and then like the weird spin-off games. And, you know, bring on more Hyrule Warrior games. I love those games. And maybe other old 2D game remakes and stuff, or even new 2D games. To your point, I would love a brand new 2D game, which A Link Between Worlds was many years ago on the 3DS, and that game was incredible. I absolutely loved that game. But I feel like, and I kind of touched on this on a video recently, and maybe that was part of your inspiration for this question. After Tears of the Kingdom, what do? Do they reset Zelda again, which Nintendo typically does? Occasionally we get direct sequels, like Majora's Mask being a direct sequel, Tears of the Kingdom being a direct sequel, but usually after they complete a Zelda game, the next one is like a resetted version of the world and those characters. So after Tears of the Kingdom, I would prefer that. I would like to see a fresh take on Link, a fresh take on Zelda, a fresh take on the world of Hyrule, and a brand new story and adventure. I am very excited to directly continue what Breath of the Wild did with Tears of the Kingdom. Perfect. The game looks amazing. I am so excited for this guy. But after that, would I be disappointed if they made a third game that was exactly like these and just the third continuation? No, I would not be disappointed. But if I was to choose, I would say reset it again like you normally do with Zelda games and give us a whole new version of everything. That's just my personal preference. Next question from Doomino Crossing Remastered, a very good longtime follower of the channel and following myself on Twitter. Says, let's say we get a Metroid Prime 4 trailer this year, which I think we will. We're all confident that Retro is going to knock it out of the park. That's true, I do believe that. But what is something that could theoretically be shown off that would leave you concerned? This is another great example of the amazing questions you guys are asking this time around. Seriously, you guys are knocking it out of the park. All of these questions are great think piece questions that really get my mind going about topics in ways I wouldn't normally think, which I love, and it's why I like doing these Q&As. So, what could I see in a first trailer for Metroid Prime 4 that would make me concerned? You know, there's not much, and partly because I just trust Nintendo and Retro to just knock it out of the park, just like you say in your question. But what would leave me concerned? I think there are two things that jump to mind. One of them would be, and this is superficial, but one of them would be if I just don't feel overly excited about how Samus looks. Because we're going to see what Samus looks like the first time we see any footage from this game. And the design of her Varia suit, just her overall visual design, right? The take on Samus we're going to see in Metroid Prime 4. It's going to be similar but different from the prior 3 games. You know, she's looked slightly different with each game. And maybe they would also show us glimpses of how her suit will change and evolve throughout Metroid Prime 4 as well. And so I think back to Metroid Dread, the first time we saw that game revealed, we were all taken aback and blown away by how amazing Samus and the new version of her suit looked in Metroid Dread. Of course, we eventually learned that it was kind of like the fusion suit and that it had to kind of regain its ability, and its visual aspect changed as she regained more elements to her suit, right? Which is normal, but we were looking at kind of a reduced version of that suit in that game. But the color palette and the look of the visor and everything was so different when we first saw Dread. It was very exciting. And so the first time we see Samus in Metroid Prime 4, what will she look like? I hope she looks just as badass as she is in my mind, but maybe we see a version of her and a design of her that's slightly less exciting. At the end of the day, even if she does look not very exciting to me, I'll be honest, I won't really care because it's more about the game and Samus as a character than what she looks like. So I'll say that's one thing that could make me kind of concerned, is if I just don't like how she looks. The other is, and this is kind of hard to nail down, it's kind of a nebulous idea, but the only thing that would leave me concerned is if the game and gameplay just doesn't really look great. I guess that's like an obvious answer. That's not very like cerebral of me. But you know, whether it's the graphics or whether it's the gameplay or like the overall visual design, I have in my head many different versions of how Metroid Prime 4 could actually look that would blow me away in terms of just the graphical power and also the design, the worlds, the gameplay, the art style. There's many different ways it could go that would be incredible. But there's probably a few ways it could go that would look disappointing. And I can't even picture those in my mind, but maybe the gameplay looks slow or boring or unexciting. Maybe it doesn't look like they evolved the game world or the gameplay of Samus in such a way that it looks almost boring or like a step backwards. You know, so it's hard to really define what that is without having seen the game yet. But those are the things that would make me concerned, man. I want to see that Metroid Prime 4 has really taken the gameplay and Samus and the story and the worlds of Metroid to the next level. Because whether it's designed for the Switch or the next-gen console or a combination of both, there's a lot that we expect out of it because it's been so long since Metroid Prime 3. Metroid Prime 3 was made on the standard definition Nintendo Wii in 2007, you guys. It's like 15, 16 years since that game came out. It's been multiple console generations. Technology has advanced so much since Metroid Prime 3 came out that Metroid Prime 4 has to really feel like a modernized version of this series of games. And so if it just doesn't feel like it's delivering on the 16 or 17 year promise of Metroid Prime 3 to Metroid Prime 4, that will be something that will leave me concerned. The final product will ultimately determine if it's good, but to answer this question, those are the things that would leave me worried the first time we see the trailer. Next question comes from the African Triforce, who says, if Nintendo was to make another spin-off for the Metroid franchise, how would you like them to handle it? For me, I would love to see a Metroid spin-off in the form of a Halo-style first-person shooter game using the Federation troops against the space pirates. So, Metroid spin-offs. We all love the idea of Metroid spin-offs, right? I had to really think about this one. You know, you mentioned something that I think is an idea that a lot of people would gravitate towards. Just make it more like Halo. Just make it, you know, first-person, competitive, cooperative. Take the Federation Force idea and evolve it, make it similar to Halo, and do all these different things. And, you know, they've dabbled in first-person multiplayer multiplayer Metroid before, right? Metroid Prime 2 did it, Metroid Prime Hunters did it, Metroid Prime Federation Force did it. And look, I like all those games. I like the multiplayer mode in Metroid Prime 2. It's very basic and bare bones, but it was cool for what it was at the time it released. I think Hunters was great. I think Federation Force is really fun and way better than people gave it a chance for. But it was also missing Samus, and so yeah. So when I think of a spin-off, this is different than probably what you're thinking. I think my ideal Metroid spin-off is not even to really make it focused on multiplayer. I wouldn't be sad if we get another Federation Force style game. But I think that what I would rather have it be is something like what I think Metroid Other M is, which is Other M is technically a spin-off, right? It's in line with the 2D games. It really fits in the lineage and the storytelling of the 2D games. So it is a canon real game, and it's kind of like a mainline game, but it's also kind of a spin-off because it's not one of the numbered 5 games. And I know people hate Other M. You guys know I like and I defend Other M. But whether you like or dislike it, forget that part of it. The reason I compare it to Other M is I want it to be a game that features Samus, that is a single-player game, again, starring the main character Samus, but that takes place in an in-between story between any one of the numbered games, you know? The Prime games take place between Metroid and Metroid 2. Metroid Other M takes place between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, right? That stuff to me is really interesting. So make another game that's a Samus single-player game, a spin-off title that takes place between any one of these games. Maybe it takes place after Metroid Dread, but before Metroid 6 or whatever that game is going to turn out to be. That's the ideal Metroid spin-off to me. If you want to go multiplayer and first person or whatever you do, that's fine. I'm open to it. Again, I love Metroid Prime Hunters. I like Metroid Prime Federation Force. But the one thing I'll say is if you do that, Nintendo, you need to have Samus involved. That is one of the main things that killed Federation Force. There's a couple of things that killed that game. You know, releasing on the 3DS at a time that we wanted a new Wii U Metroid game, that was a huge blow to it. But also the fact that it didn't star Samus, even though she makes a cameo, that was the other death knell for that game. If you want to make a spin-off game, make it, that's competitive, I should say, or multiplayer, make it more like Hunters. And honestly, I would even say make a Hunters 2, so that you get a Samus-focused single-player campaign, but then you also get a really cool online competitive first-person shooter mode. And if you make that for consoles and not for like what the DS was, it wasn't even 3DS, that was for the DS, I think you'd have a pretty good game on your hands. So that's kind of my long-winded answer. I would prefer a single-player Samus-focused game, but if you're going to go multiplayer, just make sure you still have Samus, and I think you'd have a pretty good game on your hands. Last question comes from Joel Ernesto, who says, when do you think Nintendo will introduce a new character that will stick with the audience? This is a great question, and a very important question that I think not a lot of people have been thinking about for a long time. And I think it in a way, it's almost like asking when will there be a new IP that really feels like it belongs alongside of Nintendo's other famous new IPs, right? And with the new IP comes the idea of a new starring character or a new starring protagonist. This is something that I think Nintendo really needs, you guys. I think you could make a case for the last time there was any new, like, protagonist or character from Nintendo that kind of stuck with the consciousness of the audience. In a way, you could say would be like Shulk from the original Xenoblade Chronicles. And then you, of course, can throw in a lot of the other characters throughout all of the different Xenoblade Chronicles games that are characters that people know and love. And look, I'm not a fan of JRPGs, but I love the Xenoblade games. The first one is my favorite. I love Shulk, and so I think it's cool that those characters stuck around. But they're not really like, when you think of Mario and Samus and Link and all these other characters, you don't really think of Shulk in the same vein, even though he belongs. You know, you've got Olimar from Pikmin, and he's kind of in that conversation, and the Pikmin characters. There is Splatoon, and that one I think fits in a weird kind of box because Splatoon is multiplayer focused. Those characters, yes, we like the Inklings, and they show up in Smash Brothers and Mario Kart and stuff. But they're not really characters the way Link or Samus or Mario is, right? Because really the Inkling characters are just like templates. You get a male template and a female template, and you can make them whatever you want. And so they're great for those games, but they don't sit alongside Mario and Samus is what I'm trying to say. So I think, to answer the question, Nintendo does need a new character and a new IP. Kirby is another one. I mean, Donkey Kong, think of all these characters. They need another new character and a new IP that can sit alongside Samus and Mario and Kirby and Link and Donkey Kong and all of these other ones, right? And so I think with the Switch 2 or the next generation, now is the time. They need, in the first year of this console, in my opinion, a new IP that introduces a new character that hopefully is not multiplayer focused, because we gravitate towards the characters that are involved in big, lengthy adventures. And so I hope they make a new IP that's a big adventure, Xenoblade is great. I love them, but I'm not talking JRPG. I'm talking about something more Nintendo-like, right? Make it, in that first year, a big adventure starring a new character. You know, I would love it if it was a female character. We could use more female stars, you know. Samus and Zelda are amazing, but, like, let's get another one. Doesn't have to be female. I'm just saying it would be nice to see that. Any new character that stars in a new adventure, and that isn't like a create a character template. Make it somebody. I want Nintendo to design their character and write their personality into the story and into who that person is, and just make something awesome. Do it in the launch of the Switch 2. I know we had ARMS in the launch of the Switch, and that was fine, but again, it's a cast of characters and it's multiplayer. Do something that sits alongside Samus and Mario and Link, and you're going to have yourself a winner. So that's it. It was fun to do this Q&A. Again, so many great questions. Thank you guys so much. To everyone whose question I did not answer, sorry I didn't get to it. I only was going to choose 5, and I got a whole bunch of questions from you guys. So if you want to be involved in these in the future, follow me on Twitter. And with that, this was a lot of fun, and I'll see you guys on another video next time.